Hey there! Welcome to a delicious hip external rotation themed class. We're going to dive into kind of a new setup as well as do some conditioning for the hip after we get into that setup. It's going to be a little shorter class, but you will need some props for it to get into those positions. A block for our warm-up, and then two pillows. One that's a little bigger and more stuffed so it can support your pelvis, and then a little smaller one will be fine for under your head when we're laying on your back. Okay, so set those pillows off to the side for now, and then let's go ahead and start up with a little cat-cow. So come onto hands and knees. Good, and just open up your fingers wide. Try to get a stretch in your hands, even a stretch into your forearms. Find the toe position that works for you, create some tension. And then start this cat-cow from your chin. So pulling your chin into your neck, rounding to find a stretch in the back of the neck that spills down into your upper back, through your ribs, and then all the way through the lower back until you're curling your tailbone under. Good. Now when you get there, take a breath to try to fill in the back of your body. And then as you blow the air out, do it forcefully so you can round your spine even more. Keep that shape through your lower back, and then begin your chin movement to start this second cat-cow. Reaching that chin away, stretching the front of your neck, and then stretching the collarbone area into your sternum. And then even hunting for a stretch through the whole front line of your belly. So you're really actively pulling your spine into that position. When you get there, curl your chin under one more time to go back into flexion. Good, rounding over. Finding just a little bit more control or maybe a little bit more motion from your first rep. Feeling how that repetition can work some magic on your body. And then keeping your tailbone curled under actively, finish this up with chin reaching to the ceiling. Good, getting a feel for this motion before we start messing with it a little bit. Good, keeping that tension until you're all the way down your spine. Coming to a complete stop and extension, and then let it go and just melt it away. Good. Come off of your hands. Any upright position will work. And then palms together so you can interlink your fingers, and we can just get a little motion into those wrists. So keep your palms completely connected and start exploring all the rotational positions you can get into while keeping your fingers clasped and your hands connected. Okay. Yeah, good. And as you get a feel for it, you'll notice you're sort of going in a direction. So pause and go the other direction so you can invite rotation in that way. Good. And particularly now noticing any stretch sensations you might feel on the sides of your wrist joint. So not the top or the bottom, but more of the side positions. That's really going to give us an idea of how tight or mobile your wrist capsule is, and that capsule is going to be really a key piece to maximizing your wrist function. Okay, great. Now from there, let the hand clasp go. Let's just do one last wrist drill. Elbows into the side of your body, two tight fists, and imagine you're grabbing two heavy hammers. Okay, so you're really investing some effort into your arms. And then from here, hammer down and find or look for a stretch on that inner side of your wrist. Try to wedge your way into that stretch. And then bring the hammer back and look for the stretch on the outer side of your wrist. Good. Back and forth like this. And just imagine as we go that those hammers are somehow getting heavier and heavier. And so your effort in your arms and upper body is increasing accordingly. And this is really just to make up for the fact that your body will tend to relax as it goes through a drill. So we want to keep the intensity up so we can really keep working to end range and warm those wrists up. Good. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Shake it out. All right. And then grab your block, come back into cat-cow, and place that block right between your knees or thighs in a position that makes you feel like you can get a strong squeeze on the block. So if someone came up to try to take it from you, you'd be too strong for them. Okay? Too strong. Then add to that strength feeling of squeezing the block the pressure in your hands and your feet. So your whole body's turned on tension, and make sure it's a little more tension than you had when we were warming up a second ago. And then we do one cat-cow rep from here. Chin tucks into your neck, rounding the back of your neck into stretch. And as you go, spend a little mental effort on keeping the block squeezed. This will change your experience of the cat-cow just a little bit and might open your eyes a little bit, open your perception. Finding as much flexion as you can, curling that tailbone under, hold the tailbone position, and then start your chin moving away from your neck. Again, going slowly enough, controlled enough that you can keep the block squeezed the whole time. Good. Maybe noticing how that block squeeze impacts your spinal motion in a way you didn't expect. Good. And once you get that tailbone reach to the sky, finding a complete stop, relax tension and lose the block for a moment. Okay, and we're going to do one final cat-cow, but now kind of working the thighs in an opposite position where we call it frog, where you're going to walk your knees and your feet out, about as wide as feels comfortable, but don't feel like you have to really force it. So walk those knees out wide. Walk the feet out just as wide, and this might force you to bring the knees in a little bit because we do want the ankles and the knees the same width apart. Okay? Then once you're here, you can see here that Hannah's straight arms means her shoulders are much higher than her hips, so she could either walk her hands forward or come down onto elbows. Okay, so play with any of those options and realize your knees might not be as wide as Hannah's right now, and that's okay. All right? But ideally finding a little bit of stretch there, finding some brace in your upper body, finding some pressure with your feet and knees into the floor. Start your chin moving into your neck for one final round of cat-cow. Stretching the back of your neck, using your upper body strength to stretch your upper back, ribs, lower back, and then maybe even getting some curl in your tailbone even though you're in this on-stretch position. Finding that complete stop, and then chin reaching away from neck. Really trying to lift your chin, lift your collarbones, but moving only at the speed that you can keep segmental awareness going on. Nice, working, 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 and exploring how much can you lift your tailbone and extend your whole spine, find that complete stop, and then let it go. Great stuff, okay? Come on out of that position, and let's move now into side lying for some hip CARs to finish up our warm-up. Yeah, so snag one of those pillows to go under your head, lay down into a comfy side lying position, and for now, both knees can be kind of bent and right out in front of you, and then place your top hand either on your pelvis, on your lower back, or out in front of you on the floor to add a little extra brace. All of those points might help you feel what's going on in your upper body, and that's really the key here for warming up. Once you find that upper arm position, brace, and then reach your knee and heel of the top leg all the way behind you, trying to find some contraction effort on the back of the hip without letting your spine move. Once you locate that, lift your shin to the ceiling. Find the height that you can without your spine moving, and then knee comes forward towards the armpit, chest, and cuts across your belly button line. When your knees touch, pause there and go in the opposite direction. So we tick-tock this hip CAR motion. Each time looking for contraction. So we describe the movement for you so that you can get a sense for it, but really what we're after is that you're identifying the contraction sensations around the hip that guide this motion. So see if you can tune into that. Knees come together. As you reach back behind you this time, can you also reach for the floor? So you really maybe engage that inner thigh contraction, and then the back of the thigh, and then the side of the hip. Feel that contraction moving to the front of your hip as your knee comes forward to your chest. And then maybe again the inner thigh as your knees touch. And bring knee to chest. Last 20 seconds, shin to the ceiling. Keep that height as you reach your heel behind you. Really looking for 1% more contraction in those areas than you found on the first rep. Bringing that knee and shin down towards the floor before it comes forward. And relax it, okay? Flip over, let's get the same thing on the other side. Good deal. What a nice pillow we have here. Very bright. Okay, and then again on this side, knees start out right out in front of you, about 90 degrees. Don't sweat the details on this one though. And then top hand either on the pelvis for feedback, lower back, or the floor for extra bracing. And then once you've identified that, take a breath and brace your midsection. Okay, feeling that brace, maintaining it, go top heel and knee behind you. Letting it be a medium effort, and you're really just exploring. How much can I reach that leg back? How much can I find contraction to reach my leg back? Then continue with the hip CAR, knee to the ceiling, then to the armpit, chest, and cutting across. When your knees touch, reverse course. Finding that height with the knee, and then keeping that height as you reach the heel behind you, but not letting your belly button turn towards the sky. And that really will be a tendency at first, almost always is. I guess Hannah's just done, like a few thousand hip CARs, so conditioned it out. But keep note of that if you're newer to these hip CARs, that your spine really will be trying to move and volunteer. And so most of your energy and effort has to actually go into keeping the brace or the frame of your upper body still. Good. Last 15 seconds, really looking for those sensation of contraction. Knees touching. Oh, and let's get back too. So knee to chest, shin to the ceiling. Keep that height to find more contraction on the side of your butt, and then the back of your butt or back of your hip. And then really reach ankle and knee towards the floor before you start coming forward. Yeah, so we can invite some abduction. Yes, yeah, that close but forgotten corner, exactly. Ooh. Okay, so now go ahead and stay in this side lying position. We'll stay on this side. We're gonna adjust a little bit for ease of being able to figure out what position we're working on. And we're gonna get into our stretch and isometric portion for the hip. And like I said, this is going to be biasing hip external rotation. So if you know that's a need for you based on assessment, kind of your ears can perk up. But we're also going to be working on extension, which is a little different than how we usually work on external rotation. So to find that extension first, oh yeah, good call. Grab your big pillow and set it behind you, because that's going to be a support and it's going to be tough to grab once we get set up. So grab that. And then to get into extension, we're going to be working actually the bottom leg. So slide that bottom leg behind you and find that same contraction on the back of your hip that we were working in your hip CAR to really actively reach the leg back. And then when you can't reach it back any further, you might be able to use your foot, top leg foot or the bottom leg foot to just kind of walk that leg further back. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep, good. And we really want to try to wedge that leg into as much extension as you can, okay? And we'll keep working on that. And then from here, place your top foot on your inner thigh or on your knee. Take a second to feel out what feels comfortable. It doesn't have to be the same for everyone, but we do want to pin that thigh bone to the floor, okay? So hunt for that, yep. And then keeping that leg pinned to the ground so it can't move, gently and slowly start rolling towards a back lying position, but only as far as you can go without that bottom thigh leaving the ground, okay? Now when you get here, you are basically hunting for a stretch through the front of your hip. You might find that immediately. If so, great, you're ready to kind of camp out here. But if not, I invite you to roll back onto your side, wedge your bottom leg a little further back, maybe make sure your knee is bent to 90 degrees and not starting to straighten, okay? And then pin the thigh down, roll onto your back or towards a back lying position, and hunt for that stretch again. Hannah, you mind kind of just gesturing where you're finding that stretch? Yeah, exactly. It'll be the front of your hip capsule, maybe more biased towards the inner thigh or groin area. Okay. Now, as you get set up and find that stretch, you do want to support yourself with that second bigger pillow. Wedge that right underneath your pelvis or sacrum area, and you should feel that, okay, I can sink into this just a little more, but you're not really changing the position that you found at your hip. So you're really letting that position sit. Okay? Now this can be a very gummed up area, right? When we're sitting a lot, the front of the hip can get very short. So it's going to be very helpful today for us to sit in a little bit of a passive stretch. And we're going to sit in a 2-minute passive stretch. There's a very particular reason for 2 minutes, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But for now, your job is going to be to relax and melt into the floor and feel that your breathing slowly calms down, maybe slows down, especially on those exhales. So as the air travels out of your body, can you let your body sink into the floor and therefore let your hip sink into the stretch even more? Okay? The goal is not to overcome or dominate the stretch feeling that your body's giving off, but actually to let that stretch feeling, called a stretch reflex, slowly let go, because it's basically like a trust situation. Your body trusts you in this position, and so it's going to release that reflex of tightening up at end range. So we got to breathe through that stretch reflex. But the other reason around 2 minutes, why that's such a magic number for passive stretching, has to do with studies that have been done on the structure of the inside of cells. Okay, so for our last minute of breathing and stretching, I thought I'd just share a little bit. You know, often in school, we're taught that the cell structure on the inside is sort of like a bag. It's just filled with fluid. But that's not the case as they get better images of the inside of cells. What it turns out to be is that there are actually many microtubules, they're called, or microstructures that are serving as struts from one side of the cell wall to the other side of the cell wall inside that cell. So imagine hundreds or thousands of these struts creating a brace or a structure for your cell. Those microtubules start to change shape when your body's in stretch at about the 2-minute mark. Okay? So that gives us an idea of why 2 minutes. The final point is just that those microtubules are connected to your DNA. So if we want to make a long-term change, we need to let the stretch get all the way to the inside of the cell structures, and then that way we know that your DNA is actually getting the signal, getting the message of stretch that you're giving to your body. Okay? So that was about 2 minutes and 3 seconds. So we're ready to now invite some isometric training for this position, for this hip. We are going to be focusing on the bottom hip, just to reiterate, but the rest of your body now needs to become involved. So take a breath in, brace your body just a little bit to make sure nothing's going to move in your spine, and also make sure that top leg is strongly pressing the thigh into the floor. Okay? Once you feel that, begin your Pale's contraction for your bottom thigh by lifting your knee up into that top foot, but not letting anything move. So you're trying to lift your knee. You're feeling some contraction building. Once that knee is trying to lift up, also think of your bottom ankle pushing down. And this is how we can bias a rotational contraction in your bottom hip. Okay, so again, the knee is trying to come up, the ankle is trying to push down into the floor. Search out those sensations or those cues and gradually ramp them up further and further, aiming for about a 70% effort today. And hold it for another 10 seconds. Ankle heavy, knee trying to lift up off the floor, but you're not letting it. You're too strong for it. 3, 2, 1, and relax. Good. Keep your body shape. Okay. Now, start asking your bottom thigh or bottom knee to actually reach down into the floor. So now you're actively pinning that thigh down. Okay. Once it's actively pinned, you could take your top foot off and set it on the floor. Set it wherever you would like on the floor. Maybe in front of the thigh feels good, maybe behind, but wherever you set it, you're not letting your spine move off that pillow. Okay? Now thinking back to the bottom leg, your bottom thigh is pushing down into the ground. Also add a feeling of trying to lift your bottom ankle away from the floor. Okay? Yes, so this creates that opposite rotational effort from what we were just training. We call that a rails contraction. You might be feeling a little cramp developing in the back of your hip, in the butt area, and I want you to invite that, incorporate that, sit with that feeling for 10 seconds, constantly thinking thigh into floor, ankle away from floor, but be okay with no movement because you are at end range. And relax. Good. Okay? We're going to stay focused on this hip, but I actually want you to roll onto your side again. Okay? Try to scooch that bottom leg back maybe just another ½ inch or inch to see if you can find more extension, keeping the knee bent, and then plant that top foot one more time on the thigh, pin it down, and then gradually roll yourself back. Adjust that pillow behind you if you need, because you just might be able to roll more onto your back. Okay? Good. And there's always, we say this almost every class, but realize you might roll more onto your back than Hannah is, okay? You might not be able to roll as far onto your back as Hannah is showing. It just depends how much rotation your hip has to offer, okay? So feeling this stretch again, we don't need to hold it for another 2 minutes because those two microtubules have already gotten the message and they're already on tension. So now just take a breath and brace. Once your torso is braced and that top leg is strong feeling, start asking the bottom thigh to try and lift up, but block it with your top foot. Add to that the feeling of your bottom ankle pushing down into the ground. And now we're really training a Pale's contraction, training a rotational effort for the bottom thigh. If you're kind of confused about that, you can see the direction that I'm indicating with my hand. That's the direction you're trying to feel for the thigh. Ramp it up to your greatest safe effort for 5, 4, 3, 2. Keep your position, but just melt away that effort. Okay, now keep that bottom leg right where it is by actively reaching it down into the ground. Once it's pinned, actively set your top foot off to the side, somewhere where it can touch the floor and provide some brace. And then turn on that rails contraction, trying to ask your bottom ankle to reach away from the floor while the thigh stays on the floor. Might be tempting to lift that thigh, but don't lose the feeling of the floor, okay? Ramp this rails contraction to your greatest safe effort, really aiming for 100% or more in those tissues in the back of the hip for 3, 2, 1. Keep your body shape, but slowly let that area relax. Okay, now our final piece on this side, and then we will switch legs, I promise. Now that we have a rails contraction pretty clear, we can feel the conditioning contraction that we want to get into. So turn on that thigh into floor effort, and then the ankle away from floor effort, all for the bottom leg.
There it is.
There it is. It should be a little bit more clear. And then keep that effort going on. Start to roll back onto your side lying position, keeping your bottom thigh on the floor, but maybe lifting your bottom ankle away from the floor. As soon as you feel some daylight under that bottom ankle, pause in that amount of side lying and relax your body, okay? So we just found a very specific angle, so don't wiggle around from here if you can help it, because now we'll finish up here with some passive range liftoffs for external rotation. So brace your body, really incorporate that top leg pressure into the floor to help you, and then keeping your bottom thigh pinned to the ground. Start to rotate that thigh to lift your bottom ankle up as high as you can. Slowly lower to kiss your ankle bone to the floor, and then right back off the ground. Each rep might be a tiny amount of lift, but your thought is rotating the thigh to lift the ankle, rotate the thigh to set it back down. Up and down, never letting the leg relax. So we really get a nice strength training set. 15 more seconds. Constantly trying to feel that twist or that rotation for your bottom thigh. Great work. Stay with it. Rest is coming in 3, 2, 1, and relax. Okay, very nice. Go ahead and let that leg relax. Come on to your other side, and let's get set up on that side to get through a set. Nice work, buddy. Yeah. One hip now will not feel like the other hip. Okay? So as you get set up on this other side, get that smaller pillow to be under your head. Place that bigger pillow somewhere behind you that's accessible so that you're ready for it. And then slide your bottom thigh back into some extension. Okay? And here's again where you might use your bottom foot to kind of walk it back, or you might use your top foot to kind of press it back, as if someone was there and like able to push your thigh bone back passively. Okay? Once you think you're as extended in that bottom hip as you can get, pin the thigh to the floor with your top heel. And maybe even feel that you can like pin down and traction some tissue. So you're like almost trying to slide that tissue towards your knee. Yeah, because we're trying to stretch, and that can incorporate some extra stretch. Good.
Slide your legging towards your knee.
Yeah, don't pants yourself if you can help it. And then keeping that thigh bone pinned, start to roll onto your back, going slow because you don't even know what position is end range yet. We got to kind of find it. Once you think you're wedged in there, you can pull the pillow behind you underneath your pelvis. Okay? And just search for that stretch sensation. If you're really not feeling it, try rolling back forward. Slide that thigh bone more behind you, making sure your knee stays bent, and then roll back towards your back. Yeah. I don't know if you can see Hannah's facial expression, but when you find it, it should feel like, oh my gosh, yes, there is a stretch hiding in plain sight for many of our hips that's just on the front side of the hip. Kind of hard to find, actually. But once you find it, usually there's some recognition. Okay. Now do a quick body scan. Notice any ways you could micro-adjust. Could you adjust that pillow under your head or adjust that pillow behind your pelvis? Good. And try to find the most comfortable position you can. Notice that's different from the most comfortable position in the world, right? Like you're not just trying to relax and do nothing. Your body has to do a little something to stay here, but you do want to feel as calm as possible to again start inviting that stretch reflex to chill out. Okay? Okay, now just one point to build on our little cell anatomy exploration as we do one more minute of passive stretching and breathing. Getting back to those little microtubules in the inside of your cell. They attach the cell walls to each other, but also to the DNA that's right in the middle of your cell. Now I want to invite you to think of those microtubules as just part of a flow of kind of like wires, you could think of it, but it's really just collagen or protein tissues that run through the cell and all the way through the muscle itself. Sometimes people will refer to this as your fascial system. It's that fascia that your muscles kind of are incorporated into. And that's one way to think of it for sure. But just generally starting to imagine that there isn't actually any discrete chunks of tissue throughout your body. It's all a flow from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. It's a flow or a stream of tissue that is a little different shape or a little different makeup based on how your body makes use of that tissue. Okay? So if that's a brand new thought for you, maybe just think on it a little bit, ask us any questions. But I find that it can be helpful to keep that in mind as you're passively stretching because we're trying to really make that area that's stretching flow a little easier. That's the idea here. okay? All right, so that was 2 minutes. Brace your body, take a breath in, and then solidify that upper body brace and that top leg brace, okay? Pin that thigh to the floor actively so that now when we start to pails, start trying to lift your bottom thigh up into your top heel. You'll feel some contraction effort in that stretching area. Add to that by thinking down with your bottom ankle, pushing that ankle down into the floor as your bottom knee is trying to come up. That counter action, ankle down, knee up, creates a rotational bias at the hip joint. So slowly ramp that rotation effort up, ramp that pails contraction up through 50%, 60%, and then hunting for 70%, knowing that that's a completely subjective number. Whatever you're doing, it's probably just right for you right now, okay? Hold that for 5, 4, 3, 2. Keep your body shape, but slowly melt away that effort, okay? And then actively pin your thigh to the floor using the strength of that bottom leg so that you could set your top foot onto the ground and your thigh stays connected to the floor. And then add to that feeling of thigh down, a feeling of ankle up. So we're biasing again, external rotation of that bottom hip or bottom thigh. The ankle probably will stay camped on the ground, but you might feel it getting lighter on the floor, and that's great. You also might feel some cramping starting to come online in the back of the hip. That's good. See how close you can move towards that cramp sensation without fully cramping out. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and slowly relax that effort. Good. Take a moment here and just roll onto your side real quick. See if you can wedge that bottom thigh back a little bit more. No need to force anything, but we're just seeing if the hip gives you a little bit more space. And then plant your heel on the thigh. Keep it pinned as you roll onto your back and adjust that pillow behind you as needed. Because again, you might get into more rotation, therefore come closer to laying on your back. Bueno. Okay? Final pails rails here. Very nice work. Start to gradually, after you brace your body, of course, gradually ask that bottom thigh to try to push up into your heel, blocking with your top leg. As you feel that area come online, feel that contraction, add to it the feeling of your ankle pushing down. So for your pails effort, knee up, ankle down. Just keep repeating that inside your head, really trying to feel those things happening at once. That is rotation. So rotation can be a bit hard to find at first, but ankle down, knee up will help you find this pails. Ramp it up to your greatest safe effort here for 10 seconds. Find that maximum amount of pails and hang on to it. 5, 4, 3, 2, keep your body shape, but relax into it. Okay, relax that shape. Finally, our rails contraction. Actively drive your bottom thigh down into the floor such that when you take your top foot away, your thigh bone won't move. And then keep that thigh bone actively pressed into the ground and ask your bottom ankle to try to lift away from the floor. It will not move, most likely, but you should feel that asking it to get light turns on more tissue in your hip joint, in your inner thigh, maybe in your knee. All of it is a flow that is connected, right? Just like we were talking about. Find the maximum rails contraction you can. Thigh bone heavy, ankle bone light. Near cramp city for 5, 4, 3, 2, and melt it away. Okay? Now, just like the other side, that rails contraction should feel a little more familiar to you now. So let's finish with one set of passive range liftoffs. Get that top foot planted on the floor. Brace your torso. Bottom thigh press down into the floor. And then finally, ask that ankle to get light. Once you feel that rails contraction, use the top foot to help roll yourself slowly towards side lying, but stopping whenever you find daylight underneath that bottom ankle. Okay? Whenever you feel it come away from the floor, that's your angle to work. Keep your body working and slowly lower that ankle and then lift that ankle as high as you can. The whole time, your bottom thigh is connected to the floor and just your ankle is lifting up and lowering down. You're staying on tension. Good. Really trying to give this tissue a strong strength input. Trying to teach it how to be stronger. Work more for you. Good. Keep working on this 15 seconds. If you're feeling some fatigue in those areas, you're doing it right. You're getting that signal across to your cells. 5, 4, 3, 2, and melt it away. Okay. Now, come up to quadruped for, I think, kind of the fun part, which is where you can start to feel like how that stretching and isometric is now incorporated into your hip function. Okay? So yeah, you can get those pillows out of the way. We won't really need them, although they might be an option. Come down onto hands and knees. Okay? And let's brace. I can't even remember which side Hannah just did. It doesn't matter. We're going to do both. That's fine. We'll move that hip first. So brace your body, and then pick which hip you want to move first. Doesn't matter which. And drive your heel and knee behind you, taking care to not let your spine move. Okay? Once you feel that maximum extension, start a hip CAR. Shin out to the side. Rotate your thigh to bring that knee forward towards your armpit, across your midline. Touch knee to knee, and keep going in this direction, pausing when you get into extension. Hold that extension effort and see, can you squeeze your butt any more right now? Good, and then shin out to the side. Knee coming forward while you keep that reach out to the side. Knee towards chest, and then knee touches knee, and relax. Great stuff. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. This is just a moment. If your wrists are like the most prominent thing on your mind, then you might invite into a little bit modified quadruped. Yeah, so you could use that same pillow, forearms on the pillow. You could also put forearms on an ottoman. But what we don't want is to have the shoulders be way higher than the hips. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so figure out the setup that's gonna work best for you. And now moving the other leg, drive your heel behind you. And as you do this first pause, maybe notice a spot where if you reach the heel any further, your spine would do that motion, and then track it back and keep your spine still as you really ask for as much hip extension as possible. And now here we go, shin out to the side. Keep the shin out to the side as knee comes forward. Knee to chest, keeping that spine shape. And then knee brushes knee before you drive into extension and hold it again. Find that pause. A pause is such a powerful way to really shine a light on, can you stretch the front of your hip? Can you contract the back of your hip into a cramp? Okay, now keep going. Shin out to the side. Knee coming forward. Towards your chest, not letting your spine move. And when your knees come together, relax. Awesome, okay? Let's play with that pause idea to keep feeling how the hip is a little different from sideline. Give those wrists a quick break. Okay? Cool. And again, either side that you want, we're going to do both, so no worries. Starting with those knees out in front of you like we did during the warm-up. Drive your top leg again behind you. Okay, so you find that maximum amount of extension. And then we're actually going to do our pauses in abduction, so up to the sky, and then down towards the floor. So reach the knee, shin, and ankle straight down. Maybe imagining there's like a pole right in front of your thigh, and you're not letting your thigh come forward to hit that beam. You're just going up as high as you can and down as low as you can. Maybe you'll hit the floor, in which case I want you to push into the floor. Maybe you won't, but I want you to look for that contraction in that inner thigh. So up, Hold it for a pause. And down. Hold it for a pause. Reaching for the floor. Good. Last one. Lift and hold. Can you keep it lifted and reach it behind you anymore? And then down towards the floor. Can you feel your inner thigh reaching your leg towards the floor, but also reach behind you? Good. Okay, and let it go. Nice. Flip onto the other side. Okay. Knees out in front of you. Find your brace. And yeah, we're going to be working with a bit more effort for this brace than we were in the warm-up. So if you're feeling some heat building, you're doing it right. Drive that top heel behind you to find our end range extension. And then we're going to do that pause as high up towards the ceiling as you can for hip abduction. Find a pause and a complete stop. 3, 2, 1, and then slowly lower and reach your ankle and knee as far to the floor as you can. Good. Finding your inner thigh contraction for 3, 2, 1. Up to the sky. Find that complete stop. Finding that serious contraction. And then down towards the floor. Finding that strong inner thigh contraction, or maybe it's just a whisper for you right now, but you're looking for it. All right, and last pause up to the sky. Trying to incorporate that new tissue we stretched into, and then down towards the floor. Reaching, 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 asking for 1% more contraction, and melt it away. Okay? Now, last but not least, come back to quadruped for our final position that we want to pause into. Okay? Whatever quadruped setup makes you feel strong. Okay? And then from here, again, zooming in on your lower back, so we're not going to let that lower back move. Bring your working thigh towards your stomach or knee towards chest to find hip flexion. Okay? Now, once you get here, you can set your toe on the ground just for a moment to focus on the front of your hip, that hip crease, and see if you can actively contract that area anymore. Maybe bringing the knee closer to your chest. Yes, look at that, okay? From here, keep your body braced. Move through a hip CAR, shin out to the side. Heel reaches to the sky. Sweeping back through that familiar extension position, and then brush your knee against your other knee. Coming forward and find that hip flexion pause again. Can you reach your knee more towards your chest while your tailbone and lower back stays completely still? Hold it. 3, 2, 1, and continue. Shin to the side. Keep that reach out to the side as your heel reaches up towards the ceiling. Bring that knee behind you to get underneath your heel. And then finally, knees brush together. Bueno, and relax, okay? Let's focus on some hip flexion on the other leg, and then we'll be all set. Okay, so find that good brace. Bring that working thigh towards your stomach, feeling some effort on the front of your hip and not letting your tailbone curl under, okay? Then once you feel it, turn it all the way up for this pause. So you're really actively maxing out hip flexion, and then incorporate it. Shin out to the side, heel to the ceiling. Reach that knee behind you to touch base on that hip extension. Knees brush together. And then really try to pull that thigh into flexion, not letting your tailbone come along for the ride. Hold it. 3. More front of hip. 2. Even more. 1. And continue going. Shin out to the side. Rotate your thigh. Good. Reach that heel behind you, that knee behind you. And then bring knees to touch together. Woo! Hope you're shaking like Hannah's shaking. And relax it. Awesome work. Okay, so please let us know how that new position felt. Let us know if you have any questions about pausing during your CARs, because it's something I think we both use all the time in our own practice as well as with clients. And hope you have a great rest of your day.